Hey, it's time for TV Skywriter. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to TV Skywriter. I'm Pat Murray, your host. I'm usually known for doing the Durham Skywriter, that's Durham, North Carolina's online community paper, but every week I try to introduce you to really cool people on TV Skywriter. This show is live on Fire Talk, and then later you can see it on YouTube. All right. The guest is Mr. Nazeeh Abdul-Hakeem. He wrote The Adhan in the Bull City, and the subtitle is Building Durham's Islamic Community. Welcome to the show, Mr. Abdul-Hakeem.
Thank you very much, Pat. Glad to be here.
Now, we've met before. I did a cover story for the Durham Skywriter about the new Muslim cemetery, which is a big deal because your practices are different from what we're used to, and so you have separate your own cemetery. So it was a big deal, and I really enjoyed meeting you and having you explain so much that I didn't know for the article.
Yeah, that was a great project. I loved it very much.
So now we're going to talk about your book. And this word, Adhan, let's just start off with the unfamiliar word, the Adhan in the Bull City. And just to let people know, Bull City is the nickname for Durham, North Carolina. Both of us live in Durham.
Yeah, the Adhan, and that's the Muslim summons to prayer. And most of the time you hear news reports or stories about the Middle East, you always hear the Adhan. You hear this loud, melodic voice calling people to come to the prayer. We were able to do that here in Durham, and we've been doing it for almost 27 years now. That's why I call it the Adhan in the Bull City, because we were the first message to the Adhan, and naturally the first message.
That's a wonderful title.
It's pretty catchy once you understand what the Adhan means.
And it's a beautiful book.
Thanks very much.
You're explaining about the history of Muslims here in the city of Durham. Now, I have to tell you that Durham is my mom's hometown, so I visited Durham as a kid. And back in 1965, and back then it was like black and white. No other, I don't remember seeing Asians, Muslims, or anything. So when did the history of the Muslim community begin in Durham?
It goes back to Malcolm X when he came here to debate the future of the Negro with Floyd McKissick Sr. I think that was about
I didn't know about that.
55. I mentioned that in the book. I thought that was pretty interesting. Actually, that was probably the major event for Muslims before now, with him coming here to do that debate.
I know you did mention that Muhammad Ali actually came here to Durham.
Yeah. Well, before that, I think they established their first mosque here in 1973. Muhammad was one of the leaders here in the Triangle area. I think he lived in Raleigh, but he established a lot here in Durham. And then they used to have their first place over on Pine Street, and then they moved to their place on Chapel Hill Street now, which is now Ar-Rahman Islamic Center.
Right, and Pine Street back in the day, it was called Pine Street. Now it's South Roxbury. So yeah, but you tell us about your story. So if you don't mind, I know we only have a half hour, but your story is quite remarkable. I'd like to hear at least a little bit about it.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, I decided to write the book after I gave a history of our community to our members. And also because our community, which started basically from the efforts of mostly Black American Muslims, and now is mostly dominated by immigrant Muslims. And as a result, there's a little phenomenon going on in the country where Black American Muslims are not really in the Islamic picture anymore. And we're not called upon to comment on the affairs of the day involving Islam. It's always the immigrants, because most of the affairs, I guess, are dealing with terrorism outside the country or whatever else. But they talk to them, and we're not noticed anymore, even though Black American Muslims was noticed, first of all, with the Black Muslim movement, Nation of Islam. So, a lot of people felt that. And you have a national organization called Muslim Alliance North America, who's headed by Imam Siraj Wahaj. And he at one time used to be vice president of ISNA. And he's no longer associated with that organization. But with MANA, the idea was trying to focus on issues that affect indigenous Muslims mostly, because everybody, when we talk about Islam, we always talk about terrorism, what's going on in Afghanistan, or some ISIS or somebody that's trying to cause some kind of harm to the United States. when that wasn't the case with Black American Muslims. We were actually trying to call people to worship Allah and to be Muslims. But now the face is about terrorism, this kind of thing. So we don't get any attention anymore, although we've had a profound impact on Islam in this country, but it's not noticed. So writing this book, I let people in the Durham community know what happened, because I was one of the ones who helped start this. I became a Muslim at the end of 1979. And at that time, I was working for Durham's Community Development Department, Community Development Office, which was under the city manager at that time. I was the first planner in that office that had first Black person in that office that had a planning degree.
Okay.
There was others who had planning degrees. Jerome Brown, who worked in traffic engineering, and she's escaping me right now. She was an assistant city attorney. Brenda Foreman, she had a law degree, a joint planning law degree from UNC. Anyway, when I became a Muslim, I really didn't know much about the Muslims in Durham. I went to Goldsboro to take my Shahada. And when I got back,
and that's where you proclaim your faith, and formally
Muhammad is the messenger of Allah in front of witnesses, and that was with my brothers and some other Muslims in Durham and Goldsboro. So I came back to start my Muslim life, and finally I started running into some Muslims. After my brother moved in with me from Washington because he got accepted at NC State, so we started involving ourselves with the other Muslims, and I started learning people. But it wasn't a real community except for the Nation of Islam, which was turning towards Islam under Wati Muhammad. And they were still kind of real slow and stuck into some of the old practices, and when you become a new Muslim, you delve right into the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, so you don't want to deal with the old Nation of Islam stuff. So you had a lot of things like that here in Durham.
They were slowly becoming more aligned with the Sunni community, right?
Yeah, but it was
not quite there yet at that time.
Yeah, it was kind of an agonizing process for us to try to deal with that. That's one of the reasons we started Jamaat Ar-Rahman. We had previously hung out with a lot of Muslims at Duke University, where we made our Jummah prayer, the Friday prayer. And of course, when at one point in time, all the students left there and they left us with administration of the Jummah prayer. We weren't students. We really had to find a place. And we found the first place on Roxburgh Street, right there by Hillside Park. And
that's where the motorcycle club is now.
Club is now, yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we put the bars on the windows there.
Okay.
Pass by. And of course, that was a new experience for us because we was just in the neighborhood. And
but it was cool to have your own spot, though, right?
Oh, very much. We can do our activities when we needed to, as long as that little place can accommodate it. And then we used to have our first Eid prayer, like we're going to have tomorrow. We had it outside in Hillside Park, right?
Oh, nice.
Right there.
Nice.
Really nice. It was a really nice affair. And we felt.
At this point, how large was the congregation, would you say?
I couldn't say. We was maybe approaching 100 or so.
Oh, that's good, though.
Well, that was including children and everybody else, too. Because we used to have to travel to Raleigh to make our Eid prayer. After that, we said, wait, we can't be going to Raleigh all the time because we're from Durham. We got to have it in Durham. So we had a prayer there. That place got too small for us. And then we started looking for land. We bought some land. And we were able to get the land fairly cheaply for $10. And it was like 23 acres.
Oh, what now?
$10 for 25 acres, about 25 acres. And there were land that wasn't easy to develop. And there was houses around it. But we purchased land for $10, and we purchased the responsibility of paying off the liens and the back taxes, that kind of thing. And we had a nice little program to say we gave some of the land, a good piece of land, 7-acre piece, to the city's Greenway program. And they took that in lieu of all the taxes and things. So we came out pretty good on that.
Okay. And
we got established our first mess, I think it was 82 or 83 on Roxburgh Street. And we bought that land, I think, in 86.
Okay.
Since we still kept growing, but we tried to buy another piece of city land to make a nice parcel, but we were not successful. And so we bought our first property at the old Student Union building where we are now on Fairwood Street.
See, I didn't even know that was a college, Durham College. I
Durham
didn't even know that existed.
Called Durham Business College, then became Durham College.
Okay.
And as I mentioned in the book, Muhammad Ali came in December 6, 1977 to help try to save the college because they had financial problems. Mm-hmm. And they named their new physical education facility after him. So it was the first building in the country named after him. It was closed, I think it was like 1980 or something like that. They sold off the properties. The properties were subdivided. They sold it off. The old shopping center, the gymnasium, and the 2 dormitories, and the student union building, and the administration building. We bought the administration building in 1988, and we've been there since. In 1990, we had our first Jumu'ah prayer in October 13th, 1989. And then in 1990, we started making the adhan in Nabour City. That's why we call it adhan in Nabour City, because
you had to put some thought into it, though, right? Because many of us are used to hearing church bells.
Yeah.
But call to prayer is something completely different.
Yeah, and sometimes it's at dawn when everybody's still asleep. So I developed a process of informing people in the neighborhood, invited them to a meeting at Fairwood Street Elementary School to talk about it, so that they will understand that this is what we're going to do, and also to help establish relations with the community. And That's nice. And we had small attendance. Mr. Joe Beckton, who was the human relations director at the time for the city of Durham, he came to the meeting and talked with us about it.
Oh, nice.
So we've been making that adhan since then, and I guess just during January will be like 27 years. And we were the first masjid, what people call a mosque. I use the term masjid. I don't like the term mosque.
Hey, you told me masjid is the preferred word.
Yeah, it's the preferred. I mean, it's the word from the Quran. Yeah, and therefore the mosque is not from Islam; it's from French. So I don't like to use that. But anyway, we're the first masjid in the state of North Carolina to make the adhan.
And were you easily accepted?
Yeah, we haven't had any problems in our community whatsoever. We've had on and off activities where we invite the community to come, especially when Ramadan, we invite people to come for the iftar, the breaking of the fast. And we have some younger people who often give, on Saturdays, they often give out free lunches, like hot dogs and hamburgers out there. But in the early days, we used to go door to door, handing out leaflets and flyers and things like that, until we started the Ar-Rahman school. And that was in 1990. And the Ar-Rahman school started to take a lot of community energy, a lot of community money to make it work and to run it. And that school, we were the first Islamic private school in North Carolina to have high school graduates. And I was like 14 before the school closed, after we had a big breakup in our community. So
this was not an after school program. This was an actual school.
Yeah, a certified school, private school in the state of North Carolina.
Awesome. I remember when I was reading your book, which is called The Adhan in the Bull City, that you were surprised, at least you said so in the book, that Muslims were just coming out of the woodwork. I mean, people you didn't even expect to see. People were just coming in, just joining your congregation. So that must have been great to grow like that.
Yeah, we're still growing like that. Recently, we talked about the need to have double shifts for our Friday prayers. And that's due to number of people, also due to parking. Parking is a big deal.
I know. And when you're on a Friday, lunchtime, trying to get down Fayetteville Street, which is one lane each direction. Yeah, it can be a little rough. Now, Ellen's asking an interesting question. When you call everyone to prayer, how do you alert the followers? Is it in a public setting? Now, from what I understand, you have speakers outside, like on the roof, right?
Yeah, we have 4 speakers, one in each direction, north, south, east, and west. And we make it loud. We don't try to, scream at the whole neighborhood, but you can hear it from fairly good distances sometimes. If your ear is trained, you know what it is. But not everybody's comfortable about doing it. It's not been done at the second masjid in Parkwood. And they don't do
now.
it in Raleigh and other places. So some people come here from out of town, they'd be amazed. They said, "They let y'all do that?" And we said, "Well, we have a right to."
Yeah, let you. You should be allowed to.
Yeah.
And William wants to know, I do want to ask you another question from the book, but William does ask if it's hard to learn the call to prayer.
No, but a lot of people try to sing it versus learning to pronounce the words properly. The most important thing is to pronounce the words properly.
Right.
In Arabic, you can mispronounce words and they give a different meaning.
Oh, well, that could be awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one thing that you alluded to earlier in this conversation, in which you really get into detail in this fascinating book, is sort of like the Black American Muslims versus the incoming Muslims from different countries, and how there's sometimes a bit of a, I mean, I got the sense when reading the book that you all got along really well, because every time they needed someone to lead, it was you. Right? So I got the feeling that everyone was getting along swimmingly. But then as I continued to read on, it seemed that there was I guess it would only be natural, I guess, for there to be some conflict, between the Black American Muslims and the Muslims from the different countries like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, it's almost like the United Nations in some cases. We have the same religion, but we are different cultures. Africans, you even have differences between people from Sudan and Egypt and Libya and Egypt and Pakistan and Egypt and Yemen, and trying to.
I can imagine.
And they all have these different cultures and ways of life and looking at things. So the Black Americans are trying to learn Islam. So we're trying to go back to the sources because we can see the differences that they have, and trying to ease those differences. We say, well, let's go to the sources, what the Sunni is, and we try to go that way. And there are different Jewish schools, different jurisprudence in Islam where some people follow. And they have the evidence to support that. But there's some small differences, and sometimes it can be a real problem. The other thing is cultural, is that you find that some people from some countries don't like people from other countries. And the image of Black Americans given out is pretty bad. So they don't give us a lot of respect.
Embarrassing.
And that's what kind of unusual about our community was that it was built off people who had a lot of formal educations. We had people with PhDs, master's degrees, and bachelor's degrees, and it weren't like some of the places up north and other places.
And those were the Black people.
Yes. And that's why we took a strong leadership role, and people supported that because why? We knew what we was doing at least better than they did. But
and your first imam actually graduated from university all the way over in Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah, Imam Talib Abdullah. In fact, we were the first masjid to have a Black American imam who had graduated from Islamic University in North Carolina. There was some in other places, but in North Carolina, Talib was the first one who was the imam here who had graduated from Islamic University.
Okay.
So we had a number of first things that we did. Like, right now we had the first funeral home in North Carolina, Muslim funeral home. Not only that, first high school graduates, the first one we had a band, So we were a pretty progressive community, and we were really trying our best to establish that. And we have some
awesome
fitna that came along that broke our community up.
And fitna is troubles,
ordeals, all kinds of, mischief.
But it happens everywhere. I mean, since moving to Durham, I have learned when you drive down the street and see all the different churches, people point out, yeah, that's an offshoot of Union Baptist. Yeah. That's an offshoot of White Rock. That's an offshoot,
Right. That's what happened.
So houses of worship are always having differences of opinion and always breaking into different groups. So I guess Muslims wouldn't be any different.
No, we're not. In fact, the most division, as the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that he said the Jews are divided in 71 sects, the Christians 72 sects, the Muslims 73 sects. So we're catching the trouble here.
Yeah. But I like how you still work together to solve whatever problems you have and to use your knowledge. And like I am impressed by the knowledge and education you guys have. And you definitely aren't just wandering out there in the desert, for sure.
Right. Well, it has been really unique. You didn't find many communities and black communities run by Black Americans in the country that had, the quality education amongst the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Most places you go, the imam and leaders do not have formal education. Some of them didn't have college degrees and things like that. So,
I want to talk about two more achievements
okay.
of your community, and that is, it's a big deal. Now, I didn't see any other medium people but myself at the grand opening of your cemetery. But after you explained the practices and how important this was to your community, I was really impressed. Tell us, if you don't mind, just take a couple of seconds just to tell us about the funeral home and the cemetery.
Okay. Well, the funeral home is located on a building on Favorite Street. It's the closest point to our cemetery, which is maybe a quarter of a mile away. In most cases in North Carolina, the Muslim cemetery is out in the country somewhere, a long ways away. And that was the experience that we had going to the one in Saddle City, going to the one near Burlington, the one north of Raleigh and Wendell. But since we had the land that we had, we wanted to try to use it for a cemetery, and we was able to do that. It's right in the central city, as you know. The funeral home, we had a Muslim funeral director who, Dr. Hussein, who worked with Haynes Funeral Home over on Driver Street.
On Driver, yeah.
Yeah, he got his license there. So we established the funeral home first, which is generally unusual. Most people do the cemeteries first, but we established the funeral home first. So then we said, hey, we need a cemetery. And we said, well, let's see if we can use the land that we have. We had that big tract of land over there, and so it was okay. It's really a nice project. It's amazing how easy it was for us to do it in terms of raising the money, no problems with the city, the way the project ran. For me, it was great because it's the first development project I had since leaving the planning department anyway. We always had to make sure that our graves face the direction of Mecca. We buried them without caskets. Everybody said, well, y'all do green burials? I said, well, you can call it green if you want to, but we don't embalm. We just wash the bodies and prepare them and wrap them and shroud them in white cloth. And we make a prayer, which is very, very, very short, not taking 5 minutes. And we take them to the cemetery and, bury them. It's a very quick process, easy process.
But very respectful and beautiful, because Mr. Latif was one of the other gentlemen I interviewed for the article said that it was a real blessing to be one of the ones who, the men, of course, wash the men's bodies, and women wash the women's bodies. He says it's a real blessing to serve the community in that way.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah. And I thought it was actually the way he explained to me, I can actually see people adopting a similar practice in the near future, because the way Christians, the way we bury our folks with this exuberant funerals with $1 million caskets and concrete slabs and whatnot, it's really unnecessary to go through all that.
It is.
I'm just saying.
Well, people are finding that it's very expensive to bury.
Yeah.
We keep ours down because we don't do a lot of the embalming. In fact, we don't have embalming facilities because all we're going to do is wash people. If it gets to the point people have to be embalmed, things like that, we have to take them to another mortuary.
And I think the way Mr. Latif explained to me, that would only happen if there isn't, like if they die from violence and the state examiner or whatever has to look into all, if it becomes a criminal matter. Yeah. But otherwise, people are buried as soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Tell me about Parkwood, because when you all bought that, I was really impressed.
Well, yeah, well, I wasn't in front of that project. They started executing that project when I was in Egypt, and when I came back, some people kind of feel like I might interfere in the project, but I don't do that kind of thing. I learned all my years in planning to work with people and to try to make my decisions and comments where they count and stay within that. You know, I don't try to ruin people's stuff, you know, unless it's totally wrong. You know, I set up something wrong, but you know, they had a little hard time getting a lot of people to support the project, but they finally did.
And it's a whole shopping.
It's a shopping center
area. It's where the Parkwood Library was, and there were some shops.
Yeah.
And you bought the whole thing. Yeah,
the whole thing was up for sale. In fact, the city was going to buy it first to put a recreation center there, but the 2008 recession killed that idea. So they not to. So we bought it, and right now it thrives more than Feather Street does. It has more.
So now you have Juma, Friday prayers, on Fayetteville Street, and also in Parkwood.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And
don't you have a school? How about you had a school?
Well, Al Huda Academy is also there. It's a private school run by MAS, Muslim American Society, and we support them by not charging them rent. I think they have like the 6th grades now.
Nice.
And
the last time I wrote about them, they only had 3 grades, so they're up to 6.
6 or 5, you know, I'm not quite sure. They're just starting the school year now anyway.
Okay.
But they're going to have to expand soon because they want to keep educating the children as they get older.
That makes sense.
We also have down in the park, we have our Misbah Academy, which is a Quran school, where on the weekends we have our imam and his assistant teachers. They help to train people to learn the Quran. Right now, we've had 4 young men who have learned the Quran.
Nice.
Memorized
the entire thing, right?
Memorized the whole Quran, yeah. So those are some of the good things that we have going on there.
That's nice. Well, I just wanted to thank you for being on my show, sir.
Okay.
Speaking with Mr. Nazeeh Abdul-Hakeem, author of the book, The Adhan in the Bull City. Bull City, of course, is the nickname for Durham, North Carolina. Building Durham's Islamic Community. Beautiful book. Where can we get this book?
You can get it at the Regulated Bookstore on 9th Street and some at Letters. But if you want to order it online, order it from lulu.com. By the way, another reason I wrote this book was to try to help start another project for a community center.
So thank you very much, Mr. Nazeeh Abdul-Hakeem, for being on the show on TV Skywriter. And folks, be sure to watch the TV Skywriter live on Sundays, 7 p.m. on Fire Talk, later on YouTube. And so I'll say good night for now. You have a beautiful day, and I will see you next week.
Okay.
Ciao for now.